Right, Jake. Something horrible happened to me.
Uh,
So we were talking about how when you're thinking of a character or an NPC, and you start, you're doing voices,
yeah,
you're trying to
I
find
frequently
kind of what
sit
sounds good.
driving my car alone, and I'm doing character voices, and
A,
yeah, that's
a lot of it happens while driving, right? That's a
yeah,
good
it's
time.
almost always while driving.
But at my work, I work in a pretty like secluded area. I've got kind of my own area, and I'm doing my thing, and I'm planning for this upcoming campaign that we have, and it's using this system, City of Mist, which is all based on like myths and folklore and
Hmm.
legends and fairy tales and stuff, and people like channeling that power, right? So I was trying to think of some like cool kind of fables or myths to pull from, and I was going through some in my head, and I thought of kind of an interesting idea that you could do with like the big bad wolf. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm thinking of this like this kind of patron, that gives you power, being the big bad wolf, and powers that could come along with that. And I'm just I was thinking of like different ways you could play that, really dark and gritty, and I kind of came to the conclusion of like, what if he's like a little more laid back, kind of trying to help you along this journey. And I
Hmm.
I naturally come to this conclusion of like kind of thinking of what that voice would sound like. And
I know
oh
where
my
it's
gosh,
going.
I'm so glad I
I know
haven't.
where it's going. I'm so
I'm
excited.
so glad. I'm so glad I haven't told you this story yet, and that we can do it on mic, bro. I'm sitting there doing my work, minding my own damn business, and I go, I'm the big bad wolf. And I turn around, and my boss is right there, and there's no way he didn't hear me. There's no way. It was nightmare. It was an actual nightmare come to life. He's dead. I don't even know if the mic's picking up his laugh.
That's so
It was horrible. It was actually the worst thing. So
Did he
never
say,
again. I'm never.
did he not say anything?
No. He said, "Hey, how's your day going?" I was like, "Oh, pretty good. Things are running well so far."
Fucking, I'd be so put off if I turn the
Dude,
corner.
also, there
and just
could
hear
not be a
some-
worse.
and just hear
Dude.
someone go, "I'm the big bad wolf."
Dude, there's also not a worse like voice or line that you could say. Like if I was like, "Oh, I'm Strahd von Zarovich," or whatever, at least it would just sound like nonsense.
Oh my god.
But fucking, I'm the big bad wolf, bro. Like, Jesus
Dude,
Christ.
that's so fucking worse. That's so bad. That's so, if I was your boss, I'd fucking fire you so damn
Dude.
fast. I'd be like, this guy's a creep. He's gone.
Basically, what I'm saying is, I got the voice down. I'm ready.
Oh my fucking god.
It was
Oh.
horrifying. So voices will be only in the car now. It is only a car time activity.
Oh my god, my stomach hurts. Holy shit.
I think I couldn't even hear you laughing. I think your mic just
No,
fully.
my mic was picking
peaked.
it up. I can see it on Audacity. It's
Good.
fucking-
I'm glad.
I'm fucking giggling, man. That's so fucking funny.
Oh, dude.
I'm the big
Big bad wolf. I'm glad that I got a funny story out of it, especially now that we're recording things like this. But
You should ask.
Oh my
You
God,
should
I
ask
wish
him at some
it
point.
did
Employer
not.
reviews. You'd be like, "Hey, what am I, motherfucker?"
get on my name tag.
Big bad
Keagan,
wolf.
Big Bad Wolf. That's my podcast title now. I'm not the Forever DM. I'm the Big Bad Wolf. That's horrible.
Dude, I'm fucking gone. That's so fucking funny. I'm so glad you
Well,
not
aside-
told me that. Dude, holy shit.
Aside from my own horror stories, I do have some stories here that.
My stomach hurts so bad.
So, my name's Keegan. This is my friend Jake, and we are the Gelatinous Dudes.
Oh fuck!
Our goal is to try to give some advice about tabletop RPGs, read some funny stories, and maybe, well, first of
get
all,
a
just
laugh out of
entertain you.
people.
Get a laugh, and secondly, hopefully help some people run their games or play in their games better. Oh, that threw me. I'm way off track.
I'm fucking gone right now. I can't even. That's all I could. I just think of playing through my head and how nervous you were after.
Dude, it wasn't even like I am like a pretty nervous person, but like it was truly just like my brain just like shut down. It was like just absolutely not, just like fully went into like NPC, like you like, oh yeah, weather is nice, huh? Like it just like I didn't have anything left. Okay, I do have a story.
I'm ready for it.
This is from Reddit user One Reflection 4736.
One Reflection 4736.
You don't really have one reflection though, do you? Ever been in one of those one of those little mazes, those little funhouse mirror mazes?
Dude, I have been. I fucking hit. I remember I was probably like 6. I for some reason thought that I would go through the maze much quicker if I started sprinting, and I fucking bonked my noggin probably harder than I ever have before in my life.
And you had a big head as a kid.
I was a little skinny guy with a giant head.
Like true bobblehead, just boing inside here.
Yeah, I shook the whole fucking building with how big that dome was.
All right, here's what One Reflection 4736 says. Discovered this weekend that our DM has stolen the entire setting and plot without telling us.
Oh.
So, we've been playing this campaign for about 5 months now. It was presented to us as if it was the DM's homebrew setting, magic system, and plot. The realization came like this. This weekend, the morning after our most recent session, I was doing dishes and talking to my wife, who is also a player in this campaign. She asked me if the campaign was in a pre-existing setting. Because place names were sounding familiar to her, I said no. As far as I was aware, this was the DM's own creation. Oh, how wrong I was. We looked up the place name and saw it attached to a fandom wiki. We checked the fandom wiki. We saw everything described to us in-game, down to NPC names, the magic system, even the plot up to what we have played so far. It's an entire novel series. Now, my problem with this isn't that the DM decided to use these novels for this campaign, but that they presented it as if it was their own homebrew.
Plagiarism.
What do y'all think? Am I crazy? Is the DM? Where do we go from here? And then there's a couple edits here where we responded to comments.
Okay.
There seems to be a bit of a misunderstanding, as I was somewhat vague in the post, that the DM doesn't find this before we're ready to address it. But to answer some points I've seen, on the overall, no, the players have not been having fun. It isn't a borrowed setting, it's the exact plot, to the point where we're being forced to fall around the main character of the series. What? And the DM has used a ton of AI in the creation of stat blocks and translation to D&D. And my problem is not at all that this was done. I don't care if the DM wanted to use a pre-existing world and setting and everything. That's fun. That's what D&D is for. My problem is that he's been lying to all of us for months and presenting someone else's work as their own. Since people seem to think that I have no right to complain, I'll elaborate that I was the DM first of a 3-year-long homebrew campaign and setting that we finished a while ago now. I love to DM and prefer over being a player, but the current DM wanted a turn. I understand that it's difficult and some may have a harder time than others in the creative aspect. To lie to us about it is insulting. We are grown adults and close friends.
Yeah, that's wild.
That is pretty wild.
That is pretty wild. The thing that gets me the most is that they're actively following the main character from the book series. It's like you couldn't even like make them kind of fit in as the main characters. You had to just be like, here's the main character and you're their little subjects. Welcome to being a pawn, you motherfucker.
Yeah, and like I think it kind of opens discussion, like how do you feel about kind of, DM inspiration and taking things and whatever. And like, I'm definitely someone that as a DM, like I take a lot of inspiration. Yeah. I love when I read a cool, book or watch a movie or watch a TV show or something that has like some really cool concept. But
yeah. And I mean, the thing is though, is that like, you're not, whenever you take like, say like when we played the Strahd adjacent campaign, you didn't just steal Curse of Strahd. That campaign was significantly different than Curse of Strahd. The only thing that was the same was the villain's name was fucking Strahd and he was a vampire. That was it.
Yeah. You can take inspiration. I would never like, I don't think, stealing something completely outright is probably the best move. One, because, like this story, like your players could figure that out and that could cheapen the experience.
It could make it significantly worse. I think there's a way that you could, you could like take a world and make it work, but
definitely.
Like if you were to be like, okay, let's run a campaign in Alexandria, we're going to the full freaking Critical Role setting. It's like, okay, that's
Alexandria.
Yeah, that's I'm fucking down for it. There's a ton of lore. The place is cool. We absolutely cannot follow the path that Vox Machina follows in Alexandria. It doesn't work. It's bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be ridiculous. But the
setting can be fine.
Especially because your players, if they do figure it out or if they are familiar with the series, like, they're going to see so much of the story coming, and that's not enjoyable. Like, you don't want it to get spoiled for you because you realize that you're just playing Percy Jackson or whatever.
Yeah.
I think
a good setting. We've not played it before, but I think what's the Star Wars one? Edge of the Empire.
Oh, Edge
of the Empire could work. I think Edge of the Empire, it's Star Wars. It's meant to fit in the Star Wars universe. But like, if I
it's
saw
a Star Wars tabletop RPG,
if I saw Luke Skywalker in Edge of the Empire, I'm not going to be like, "Holy shit, my game's broken." It's like, "Oh my god, there's a Jedi in front of me," because that's the setting then.
Yeah.
But if like, if the setting was like, "All right, you open up, Keagan, you're on a dusty planet filled with fucking sand. There's 2 fucking suns. Your Uncle Ben slaps you on the ass and tells you got to get to work." Like, obviously, what's going to happen there. I'd
be upset that Uncle Ben is touching me that way. No, there's definitely, like, the expectations that you set for your players has a big effect on that. And so if you go into it thinking that it's completely homebrew and, that they've created all this and you find out it's not, that might feel a little
like
cheap or something.
There's a difference between plagiarism and, what's the word?
Right.
Citing, basically, abbreviating.
Yeah, or just like taking artistic license to something, something
parodying,
a creative twist, parody. Yeah, sure, something like that. But sometimes, like especially like, I've read a book, like I recently read a kind of older sci-fi book, that was not like incredibly popular or whatever, and like I knew that like none of my players have ever read this book. They probably will never read this book. And if I wanted to take the world, the magic system, and some names, I probably could and maybe would. I definitely wouldn't have you guys follow the same story. I would try to create, something that is more fitting to a tabletop RPG because movie plots or book stories, the kind of plot and pacings of those things, they don't fit well into a tabletop RPG. Because they're so player driven. Your players are going to choose where to go, who to talk to, how to interact with the world, and it's never going to line up with how the main character did.
And I guess if you like get into it and they're just like, "Oh, we're going to follow the exact steps happen in this book," you have to railroad them the entire time.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun for any party involved.
And it doesn't sound like they had much fun.
No, it doesn't. I'm really curious to know what the book series is. I tried to look through the comments. It doesn't look like they've said, but yeah, it's, and definitely take inspiration. If you think something's cool and really interesting, chances are your players will also find that really cool and interesting. So finding ways to incorporate, your kind of favorite themes or storylines or whatever into your own campaigns is not a bad idea at all. It's something I often do.
Yeah.
I would just find a way to make it your own. If it is something more obvious or more popular, if you're running a campaign like Jake's Star Wars example, maybe it's not a desert planet, maybe it's an ice planet, and maybe
Maybe
they don't have to be the biggest changes in the
suns.
world. Yeah, there's 3 moons and it's an ice planet. But trying to just tweaking it, to the best of your ability and making it your own. And then as the campaign progresses and your players start to, kind of shape the world as well with their choices, it will become something truly unique, which is, I think, the coolest part about tabletop RPGs. But yeah, try to make it your own, especially if it's something that is more popular or more kind of current, or your players might recognize.
Yeah, I think from a player's perspective, like, I feel like cheated in a way. Like, especially if that person was like claiming like, oh, this is a totally homebrew thing that I'm making up here. I'd be like, if I found out, I'd be like, all right, I'm sorry, I can't play this anymore. I can't play this anymore knowing exactly what the story is going to be. It ruins everything.
That is true. That would make it really hard. I think if I realized that a campaign we were playing was, kind of ripped from something, I think I would definitely find it odd, especially if the DM had presented it as his own thing. And I think I might see that as like, oh, like that's not super cool. Mm-hmm. But if it just is like a little bit more organic and you're like, oh, this kind of reminds me a lot of this book series or whatever, and your DM's like, yeah, actually I read that and I took a lot of inspiration, but it still is like its own original story and, mm-hmm. Has kind of become its own thing, then that's cool. And now, like I don't see an issue with that. But yeah, trying to like actively saying that like you created it, it's your homebrew and stuff like that's weird. Like that's not necessary. Yeah, I thought that was odd, but yeah, I think that's kind of where I wanted to go was what was the player's perspective, and as a DM, kind of some tips on if you do kind of take inspiration.
Yeah, I mean inspiration's fine. Like that's how you. It's hard, especially like now, because ideas are new ideas, especially are hard to come across because there's been so much focus on creativity and storytelling in the last century, especially that like
and it's so widespread. Like anybody can
access anything. So you have just a vast wealth of information and infinite storytelling that's basically been going on for the last 200 years because for the most part, humanity has figured out how to survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like I understand that coming up with new things is hard. So taking inspiration is obviously something that we all kind of lean into for everything at this point anymore. And like in storytelling, especially there's tropes that we look at in the movies and films. I mean, if you're like coming up with brand new creative ideas, like hell yeah, go you. But also if your campaign is partially Mad Max and partially fantasy, like, hey, as long as your players are having fun, that's what matters. But like directly plagiarizing something is not okay, in my opinion.
Yeah, or I mean, it could be okay if your players know that's what you're doing. Like if you tell your players like, if you tell your players like, hey, don't read this book series because we're gonna basically play that bar for bar, and they're like cool with that, then
that's
fun,
sick as fuck. But that's not what this person chose to do. This person chose to say, I'm homebrewing all of this, and then probably fucking gaslight them if they ever question anything.
Yeah, and something you said kind of reminded me of like a thing where like, often even when I do create something completely homebrew from the ground up, you'll get close to things that already exist, and you might not even realize it. Maybe you make a NPC that is very similar to something that exists in media, and you don't realize. Or sometimes your players will say, "Oh, that's a lot like this thing," and you're like, "Oh, yeah, that is." And you didn't even realize. It kind of came from your subconscious, or especially when you're trying to come up with like names for places. Like so often, like my brain will pull a name and I'm like, ooh, that's a really cool name. Let me put this down. And then like later on, or someone else will realize like that, like it's a name. That's a pre-existing thing. Well, we had a player recently when we were creating characters, the player came to me and was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to play this kind of nobleman. His name's going to be Thomas Wayne." I thought that had a really cool kind of ring to it. And I'm like, "You're playing Batman's dad?" And he's like, "Oh, fuck." He's like, "I didn't even realize. Like, I totally thought I came up with that." I'm like, "No worries." And then he came up with a different name and it was great. But like, your brain will totally do that to you. So,
Yeah.
Regardless if you're taking inspiration or creating stuff on your own, like there's going to be allegories, to things that kind of are already out there. And I sometimes actually as a DM have like been maybe even slightly like hurt or like I can't think of a very good word.
Insulted?
Like, not insulted, like kind of unmotivated after finding out that like after like a player kind of calls out like, "Oh, this character's a lot like this," and you're like, "Oh, yeah, I guess it is," because you thought you created something really cool and original, and then they're like, "Oh, it's just this guy."
Yeah, I remember.
So that's a little bit of a bummer.
We had that conversation, but
we talked about that before a little bit. But
the kind of the go ahead onto that is that's a lot of the way that people sees the world and imagines it. So like, I don't know if you've seen the pictures where it's like 4 different apples and it's how vividly does your imagination see the apples. Like for me, my imagination sees a perfectly crisp, clear apple. Like I could eat it sitting right in front of me.
Yeah, it's
but
3D,
for some people,
it's
a 2D little crayon drawing apple that a 4th grader did. And they need that, like that beat of, oh, that's kind of like this for them to fully visualize it. And that for me is why, really, like, if anyone like points something out like that and I'm DMing, I'm like, yeah, that's super cool. I like, yeah. If that's how you visualize it, like that's how you visualize it. And like, it kind of sucks sometimes when they're like, when someone like blurts over your story to point that out, but also, it's helping them visualize it. So I can't be too disappointed in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good way to think about it, rather than just like, because like comparison is the thief of joy kind of thing, and like sometimes that's how I've felt about it, but I think that's a much better outlook, is like they're interacting with something that they're familiar with to even better understand your world and your NPCs.
Yeah,
I think that's nicer way to think about it.
Sometimes like it could be a compliment. Like, I super respect a lot of the media that they're comparing it to, and if in their mind they're like, "Oh my god, that's just like this," I'm like, "Fuck, dude, I'm on my high horse right now. Hell yeah!" You know what I mean?
My BBG is like Darth Vader. People love Darth Vader.
People fucking love Darth Vader, dude.
That's true.
All right, I've got one about a bad DM. Okay. This is from MatchChen99. They say DM thinks it's funny if players die. So this is a pretty long story. I won't get too deep into it. But essentially they're playing 1st edition because the DM doesn't want to play 5e. And it gets into that they like get in their first fight, and the thief ends up with 1 HP. The monk wants to heal him, but the DM tells the monk to not waste the heal on the thief, all right? Because it'll only heal 3 and they can heal 6 or whatever. And then the DM goes ahead and tells the hunter, which is like a ranger in 1st edition, that they don't have access to basically any of their skills. So like hunter would get an animal companion, but the DM was saying that you have to find one or tame one for the first time for that to unlock. And there's a lot of instances like that where they do this.
Yeah.
And the DM says that they don't have any story, no story at all. It's fully sandboxed. There's no plot. It's fully player driven. Which, like, hey, I mean, that's kind of cool, I guess. It'd be nice if there was like something for me to look forward to, but sure. And then the players go over a bridge, and one of them fails a dex save and falls off the bridge and dies.
Bummer, dude.
Yep.
What a way to go.
And then, it's basically that. The DM just keeps They just basically are saying like, "Oh, DM killed this character too," and
Wow.
the person says that, "Hey, there's surface level DMD. So is this like normal? Do we just walk around and die and do like weird stuff?"
Definitely not normal.
Yeah.
Man, that is a bummer. Not probably a campaign I would play in.
No.
I would probably be looking for a new game at that point, a new dungeon master. But some people, they do like, especially those older systems. I think it makes a little bit more sense to me that this person wants to play in first edition because a lot of stuff like that did exist in first edition, like, you know, really dangerous, like insta-kill type traps and, you know, dangers and stuff.
I remember a rule from first edition is if you get poisoned, you just die. Because nowhere in the instructions of first edition does it say what poison does. So everyone has just come to the consensus that it just kills you.
That's brutal. I've never heard that.
Yeah, and you have
but
no
yeah,
health.
I know that stuff like that did exist. It was dangerous. Yeah, you have very low HP. It sounds like this Dungeon Master wants to run like a Dark Souls level, just like brutal, not even Dark Souls, more like survival, you know, kind of game, like really crunchy, brutal game, which some people might be into. Make like the thing that bothers me most about that one would probably be like the telling like the ranger that, you know, they have to go through all these extra steps to unlock an ability when it's like, nah, dude, like I hit this level, like I have this ability now, like that's a bummer. But again, I mean, that could be something that if your players want that, like if they want to, you know, put the work into like have to unlock everything, like it could be fun. But yeah, that doesn't sound like a game I would want to be in.
No,
it wouldn't work for me.
Like a game I would actually hate to be in.
Yeah, I can't, man. Just going across a bridge and just getting a deck save, and then when you fail, being like, "Oh, you fall off and die."
Yeah.
Like, what an unsatisfying character death. Like, what if you like imagine, you know, you really like that character? Like, that sucks.
Yeah,
like, you know,
I mean,
if you're fighting a dragon,
like in that
you know,
campaign,
that's
I don't think they ever had a chance to like the character. It's kind of a shitty thing too.
They're rerolling every session. Yeah.
Yeah, it said in there that they would literally remake characters mid-session.
Wow. I've had that happen a couple times. But I was playing in like Dungeon Call Classics, things like that. And like they have what are called like meat grinders, or like meat grinder dungeons or whatever, which like you'll like make 4 characters with the expectation that like only one of them will make it out, and they'll actually have like sheets that are like, you know, cut into
that's
like 4
like
pieces, you know.
What was that one system we played where we used the dread thing? Like we were expected to basically only part of us to make it out. Do you know what I'm talking about? We played it with Joe.
Oh, the alien like one?
Yeah, and Dread's the Jenga tower one.
Oh, yeah, I think that was, I'm not totally sure if it was the complete system, but it was kind of a hack on a game called Mothership, which is a very sci-fi alien-esque, you know, you're on a scrapper.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, like, if it's like anything like the movie, like, I literally just watched the movie Alien, so I think I explicitly made to talk about this. But in the movie Alien, the first one person survives out of the 7. That's kind of like how it was meant to be. And that, you know, that
any
could be,
like horror genre.
That could be like a cool one shot where it's like at any point your character can die, and that is the end of the game for you. Like that could be a super cool, fun one shot. But a campaign, no, absolutely not. That's terrible.
Yeah, I don't think that would be as fun. And like having like, you know, those kind of multiple characters and like ending up with one at the end of it is like kind of an interesting way to like, you know, give yourself a couple options, and then you see what survived, and you're like, oh, this guy made it. He's going to be my main character now. Now he's going to, you know, he's, rather than being like a level 0, basically like NPC type stat block, now he's going to get a full character sheet and be like a thief or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. That like gives you like not a full backstory, but a little bit of just like, you know, personal attachment to the character's history. Like, yeah, he survived, you know, he made it out. And so
he
now
survived the one shot.
But that doesn't really sound like that's the DM's goal. It sounds like he's just just killing him to kill him.
Yeah, it sounds like the DM's goal is like torture, basically. Like, how can I make this as unfun as possible?
I can't imagine. Like those stories always make me wonder. Like what I wish I could like talk to the DM from that game, kind of. Because it's like I know that's not their goal. Like I know
peek at your brain, my guy.
Yeah, like I know that they probably want to have fun and stuff, but but when you get only that one side of the story, that one perspective, it really sounds like it's just like a just unhealthy, unfun game.
Oh yeah, like as a player, if you were to do that with a campaign, I honest to God don't think I could play. I don't think I could play. Like,
yeah,
like if you're just like, let's go fucking kill crazy right here, and everybody dies every session. I'd be like, I want to like my character, but I don't have an opportunity to because they die every time I do anything.
Yeah, I want to like develop them.
Yeah.
Well, and that's definitely personal preferences for parties that maybe don't role play as much or care about kind of a character backstory. Like maybe it's like this way we get to try out a bunch of classes. River. It's like okay, cool,
sure.
So that's a play style thing. I don't. That's not something that I would be interested in. I like to kind of develop those characters and
and like character deaths can be like super cool and impactful and like. They make sense at the time. They feel right and they happen. But if it's just always, if it's every session, then it's like, what happens when the original party just doesn't exist anymore? You know what I mean?
Yeah, like that's a tough, like how do you role play out of that too?
Yeah.
And like a good, PC death can be really fun, I mean, it's always a bummer to lose your character, but like, it could like really bring the party together in a way that they weren't before, now, like, especially if like it's a death to, the BBG or like the BBG's kind of machinations or whatever. And then, so it's like, now they really hate the boss.
There's really a reason
they really want it. Like there's a strong personal investment. That's kind of awesome. But even then, like, even when that happens, like coming in as the new character, like introducing your new character and stuff is always a little tough. You always feel like the odd man out, a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, like, I mean, not to pick on you because I know that you haven't played as much, but you do love a good player death and also do love making new characters.
True.
And yes, I you're super creative and like that. You like the process of making things. But I think sometimes it's at the detriment of your current character.
That is true. And I think I've gotten much better about it.
Yes, because in high school, I remember probably your best PC, which I won't get into too much, because I think we're for sure going to do our top PCs episode at some point. But your best PC that you've done. And then he dies, and then the next session you introduce this next character, and then we stop playing the campaign after one session. And I was like, "Fuck!" It fell apart so fast. It's not like explicitly your fault, but that one. No, I remember that one session with the new character. It was so freaking weird.
Yeah, it was definitely different. That campaign mostly fell apart after that session because of COVID and stuff. There was a lot of things that went into that campaign. But yeah, that was a bummer. And yeah, I think it comes from kind of being the forever DM is that I haven't gotten to play a lot of characters. And so I have a lot of really good character ideas rattling around up there. And so I would start playing one and I'd be like, yeah, this character's fun, but I also have this really cool other idea. And so I'd kind of want to play them. And yeah, it definitely was not in my best interest at the time, but yeah, that luckily I've outgrown that to a certain extent. Not all of it. I mean, I even like the character I'm playing in our current campaign. I like a lot, and I do have a really good idea for the next character. I'm just not letting that ruin my enjoyment of this character. I'm just going to run this character,
Yeah, I'm super excited for the next campaign, but I also we've also played like 10 or 11 sessions with this character that I'm in right now, so I'm kind of into this one right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is It is hard though, like introducing new characters, and so I can't imagine doing that at that frequency.
Yeah, introducing a
You
new
know, when
character
you're having characters die
multiple
all the
times a
time.
session.
Yeah,
Even like
yeah, that's a little
it's
wild.
it sounds like the DM is trying to run this more as a board game than as like a TTRPG. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, all right,
Yeah.
so you have to defeat this dungeon, and if your characters die, who cares? Just make another one. We'll keep going in the dungeon. Maybe they just want to
like
do
you just
dungeon crawls. Like,
that's true.
like if you like dungeon crawls, then do dungeon crawls. But if you want to play D&D, you should probably play D&D.
Yeah, like you lose your character, and then in the next, then they die, or they've died, and then in the next room, there's like a guy chained up, and it's like, oh, this is my new character, and they're right into the party, and then they die, and then the next room, it's like, oh, that you see these goblins are holding a guy over a fire, and it's like, okay, and then that's going to be your next character because you have to have somebody to play. It's like,
I remember the first time we played when you DM'd, it was a dungeon crawl that we did, and I played a barbarian.
This is, bear in mind for people listening, this is like
school.
sixth grade. We were like 12.
Yeah, we were 12 and we were having a good time, and that's all that mattered. But I mean, that's basically essentially what happened. So we get into this like area where we have to sneak past this thing that'll essentially one shot you, and I, being the giant barbarian, went to go sneak in last, and I remember being the most nervous for this role because this is our first time playing, and I was like, what if my character dies here?
I remember this vividly.
And I remember it so well too. And then I roll, and I have a -1 in dexterity, so I have -1 in stealth, and I rolled a 1, so I rolled a 0. And everyone at the table was flabbergasted.
I think you had a -2.
I might have had a -2. I might have rolled a -1.
I think you rolled a -1.
I remember all of our friends were just screaming. They were so flabbergasted that I happened to roll a -1. So you're just like, yeah, you get torn to shreds by this guy. And then you just had like an extra character sheet made up for just in case this exact thing happened.
So that comes from, that was a Dungeon Crawl Classic DCC, which it's I think I owe an explanation here. So we were playing 5th edition because my dad introduced me to D&D, and then I gathered all my little nerdy friends up, and I'm like, you guys, we're gonna play this. This is gonna be great. So I had the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition player's handbook, DM's guide and stuff. So we were making characters with those rules. But then I would take my dad's Dungeon Crawl Classic. They would come in like little like magazines basically, and like every single one was like its own little dungeon crawl / adventure. And so I would take one of those, and every week we would just play a different one. It was like a totally whole new thing, right? But we didn't care. We were just, and it was so ridiculous, and everything went crazy. We talked about that one story about somebody like hiding in a bowl of nacho cheese. That comes from that. It was total ridiculousness, middle school stuff. And so that is what I was talking about though, with those like really harsh Dungeon Crawl Classic or like, old school tabletop RPG rules, is like, it was like you were traveling through this like jungle, and there was like this giant like vine pod thing that you had to walk through. And there was like a vine panther in there. And
vine panther.
It basically,
oh my God.
Yeah, it basically said like, it's like when you move through this plant pod, there's like a DC whatever stealth check, like 10 or 15 or something. And if if the character fails, the vine panther snatches them up and rips them apart, and they instantly die. Like, that was just it. That was in the book. That's just that. And then your poor barbarian with like a -2 to stealth rolls a -1 basically. And so you just ran in there screaming, and you got ripped to shreds.
I remember the thing that, because we were in middle school. We weren't role playing at this point, but you kind of like knew what you kind of a little bit knew what you're doing just because of your dad.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly, this is sneak. This is sneak.
Yeah, you were screaming, this is sneak, as you ran in, and he got ripped to shreds.
And of course, middle school me was so embarrassed by this because I was like, oh, my friends think I'm an idiot now.
Oh, that's funny. I don't remember it that way at all. I just thought it was funny.
I mean, it was really funny, but I was like, I remember like my face was probably so red, and I was just like, oh, I was the first one to die. Why was it me?
Well, and then a couple rooms later, there was like this dwarf character.
Yeah, and I got the
and
dwarf
it says
character
like it says. Yeah, it says in the Dungeon Crawl Classic, like, if a player has died thus far, like, here's the dwarf's stat block, and they can play this dwarf now.
Yeah,
and
I got the dwarf character, and it was so overpowered.
Yeah, he had, like, a whetstone that would, like, make his weapon do more damage, and he was, like, way busted. It was crazy.
That was, bro, that was 11 years ago, and we remember it so vividly.
Yeah, that's the magic of this medium, man. Tabletop RPGs, that is the magic. Like, you are getting together with your friends, you know, in person or online. You know, you're getting together, just laughing, having the best time, telling a good story. And, you know, could we have spent, you know, that Saturday playing video games? Sure. But and we did a lot of weekends.
Did a lot of
we
weekends,
played video games for a very long time. But, you know, could I tell you what was happening when we were playing video games 11 years ago? No, absolutely not. But I can tell that story in vivid detail because it was so impactful. And I could tell you 20 more from that era of D&D, you know, all the way up until now.
And I'm sure our moms were glad that we weren't just playing video games too. We were actually hanging out with friends.
Yeah, we were down there laughing, having a good time. We were probably too loud for sure sometimes, but...
Now, this is why at the age of 20, almost 24, I think right now what I'm like looking the most forward to in like later life is for my children to be doing exactly what I did in middle school, just hanging out with their friends, playing D&D. And then I want to be like your mom, where I just go down there and just interrupt it every once in a while and bring them treats.
Yeah, that's how like my dad's. So like my dad, obviously he's been playing D&D, you know. He was born in 1973. He was playing D&D not long after that. You know, he's OG. And it's funny how, like, his group has evolved because he grew up in a small town and played with his friends in, you know, elementary school, middle school, like we did. And a couple of those friends he's still playing with in person. They've all moved to a different town, and he's still playing with them. And now, like, a lot of those people's kids are also playing. So he's playing with his original friends and their kids who are now adults and have joined the group. You know, and like
every once in a while we play a game with your dad, and I think he really likes being like, oh, I introduced these little bitches to this, and they come here and worship me.
He's like the. We've got to have him on an episode.
I love your dad, dude. He's so cool.
I would love to pick his brain about tabletop.
He's got so much experience in it. There's something in there that we haven't unlocked yet.
Oh man, his room where they play, like the walls are just lined with books, you know, D&D books but you know, just tabletop RPG games of every system you can imagine, like everything. It's crazy.
He's got the best knickknacks too.
Oh yeah, all the weirdest stuff.
There's like rat skulls and a full bat skeleton in there.
It's a full real dungeon, man. It's crazy.
Awesome. All right, so I think to end this episode out, I'd like to say I'll finish this one. Keagan, you take a little setback.
All right, I can't wait.
Sit down, motherfucker. I just want to say thanks to everybody that's been watching or listening so far. I mean, we've gotten some decent views on it, and if you do like it, like, follow and share with some of your friends if you think that they'll like it. It goes a long ways. Word of mouth is obviously the best way to advertise in this space. So if you like it, just go ahead and share it with your friends. And after that,
rate it 5 stars.
Rate it 5 stars. Spotify does look at that, and they do like it.
Rate it 5 stars. We'll read it. We'll read your review on here.
Yeah, I will personally go to your house and hand you $5.
Whoa! They're gonna hold you to that.
I won't do that.
Broke,
I lied,
man.
For legal reasons, that was a joke.
And email us.
Yes, please email.
Email
it's
is in the description.
It is at the northwoodpod at gmail.com. So if you
northwoodpod@gmail.com.
if you send us an email there, just make sure to put in the subject line, "Hey Jelly Dudes," and that way I know that you've got a question for us. And
or just a funny tabletop RPG story.
If you've got a good story, I will read it, and I will force Keagan to read it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll probably find it entertaining enough to put on here. But yeah, I mean, I think that's all we've got for today. Do you have anything else?
I can't wait for our first email, man. That's gonna be that's
our first
cool,
email. I'm gonna
moment.
Put a crown on that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's all I got, man. If you're interested, we have another podcast called The Northwood Project. It's a horror anthology, more of a narrative kind of audio drama like podcast. So check that out. We're working really hard on that. That one takes a lot more effort, so it's more slow going. But check that out. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. We hope you've had a fun time and maybe even learned something about tabletop RPGs. I don't know.
All right, I think that's all we've got for you guys today. We've been the Jelly Dudes. Bye.
Goodbye.